Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have a single epically long story for you from the ProRevenge subreddit. It's a little bit different from what we normally have here, but OP covers that in the first paragraph. It's a long and winding story that can be difficult to follow at times, but in the end, I think you'll find that it's extremely satisfying. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can also read along on YouTube under our @Karma Stories podcast handle. Alright, on to the story, let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Resurrective. Scummy Japanese chairman tries to rob Ukrainian refugees, fails at each step. Most of the stories here are a collection of crafty, smooth operators getting back at their crappy bosses, cheating partners, HOAs, and so on and so forth. This is a story about me exposing a scummy chairman, let's call him Kusoda, and getting him retired. I didn't really have to do much, the old guy did most of the job himself, so I can't even tell if it was really a pro-revenge on my part, but retaliation it was indeed. For starters, me, a 25 years old guy. I'm a Ukrainian who, just like millions of others, found himself in less than pleasant situation after the 24th of February of 2022. My life has drastically changed, and sirens became my lullabies for a while. It was the last year of my bachelor degree, with the main subject being Japanese language. A few months after one quarantine was lifted, and here we are, stranded in another, but with bombs and rockets falling on living apartments from time to time. But alongside really tragic crap, a lot of us got new opportunities. I'll have to clarify that I've got multiple sclerosis to thank for my ability to leave Ukrainian borders, but this malady didn't play such a major role in this story. Unlike my upbringings, you see, I've been in school for years, and it only stopped when I mustered the courage to beat my wrongdoers. I didn't do such a good job at it, but I did get 3 rather normal years at my school after that. All 11 classes are taught in the same building, so you're stuck with your pals for the whole school life. It also made me who I am now. Basically, I don't take crap from anyone, whether it's some punk or a venerated elder. Sometimes it makes my life miserable, sometimes it makes me quite a butthole, but in this case, it really helped me a lot. This story had started on in May when our lecturer, who had been with us for 2 years by now, decided to get us out of the war-torn country and just found us a language school in Japan which would take us in. Many jumped in the train, and here goes the first interview in Zoom in which Kusoda made his first appearance. He seemed reasonable back there. We were asked to introduce ourselves, our goals, our dreams, and all of that. None of it was really relevant, just as the level of Japanese as they took everyone. There is a clear reason for that. We not only had people from our university, but also people from other places, mostly student girls, but there were a few other individuals who I will introduce later. They had a few conditions. 1, they promised us 6 months of free education. 2, they promised us apartments to live in. 3, they promised us monetary support equal to 150,000 yen, basically $1,000, for the aforementioned 6 months, each month, after which you're on your own. It was a pretty deal, and I really wished to get away from my effed up family, so I had no hesitations. So 1 month in, and the school assigned a staff member to keep contact with us. We'll call her Karen, which means lovely in Japanese. But it's not the case here. She was present during the interview and sent us questionnaires about our goals, the same as during the interview, none of which mattered, helped with documents and paperwork, booked us tickets to the middle of July, free of charge for us, which they wanted us to think was their courtesy, but as we later find out, they lost nothing on that. And in the end, we had to wait until the due day. Basically, me moving from Kiev to Warsaw is a whole different story, and only serves as a prologue to the drama which would unfold soon. Only 2 episodes matter here. Firstly, when we signed for our visa, we were told to use evacuation as a reason for our plea, not education. The school told us nothing about this procedure, and in hindsight, this was a major red flag. Second remarkable thing happened is my last day there, in Poland, when I met two girls in the airport. The first one, Diana, would later become my coworker, and the second one, Taisia, not their real names obviously, well, that 40-year-old woman would turn out to be quite an eccentric actor in this play, but seemed rather normal back there. Boy, was I wrong about her. Anyway, after what seemed like an eternity in limbo of cross time zones and half a planet, we arrived in Narita, where we were separated due to COVID-19 limitations. I alone had been vaccinated, so I had a different place to go through custodes. My baggage was lost during the transfer, and I lost my way there. But ultimately, we were all gathered by Karen and went out on a long way at a small bus driven by an Indonesian guy. This is when my group mate Elisa made friends with Karen and started her career with the school. This would be important later. We arrived at our confinement miniature flats where, due to quarantine measures, we had to spend a week. How would we eat? Well, the staff would borrow 10,000 yen from each of us, and they would bring us food and drinks while we were rotting away inside our cells, trying to adapt to a new time zone. I won't tell you where it was, as it would reveal too much information, and neither I would tell you about where we went after that. But along our way, we got presents. 10,000 yen for each from the village where we spent our quarantine, which we had to hand over immediately. Karen said they'd give us what remained after they counted how much money they spent on us. But we never saw that money, obviously. 50,000 yen from our new city, and 150,000 yen from the prefecture. The Russian-Ukrainian war was still fresh, and so were the sympathies for us. We were given keys to our new apartments, we settled in, and slowly started to get in the rhythm. At first, we were given bicycles to commute to the school, and then added to the existing learning groups based on our level. I'm proud to say I got into the N2 level, the last before N1, the highest one, and so did Elisa. What irked me though was how they shoved us into studies in the middle of it, right before the summer break during August. The material wasn't new to me, so I didn't worry. We were given free phones with a sketchy paper about how we're supposed to compensate its value if it's lost. Google Pixel from SoftBank, which would be equal to 130,000 yen. Ridiculous. Well, SoftBank never wrote those conditions. We were also given free Wi-Fi routers with a SIM card in it, with a condition not to get it out of the flat. Fair enough. And also we were given papers stating our semi-formal relationship with the school, in which they aimed to give us 6 months of education. There was no contract, no formal agreement, nothing that would make us their students. We weren't even given those fancy plastic cards to identify us as learners. In fact, we weren't. We never had a student visa. Instead of the temporary visa, we were given designated activities. Basically, you've got a year, do what you want, just don't whore yourself, which was given to each evacuee in Japan. So the time goes by, Karen posts a job offer to a hotel near the school. In the hotel, me and Diana were pouring drinks for the Drink All You Want events, in which people would come to the hotel's terrace and order booze. But the only reason I'm writing about it is because we were never properly registered as workers there. This would be important later. After a few days, we were gathered to discuss job opportunities. There was a field trip to a factory office, then it was a mall with KFC and a donut shop. Basically, Kusoda's family owns all of these places. His brother's KFC franchise spans at least across half of Japan. There was also a discussion in the classroom during which a guy from the school was offering us workplaces. During the time, I asked him if the wages he'd shown were already including taxes. He confirmed. So I took on a new job. Since bar was but a temporary gig before the terrace closes in October, I took on KFC job. This is where I'll introduce a new major character, Karina. She was my neighbor and also decided to work at KFC. Well, our first 3 days, the manager cut our shifts by sending us home earlier, which really wasn't a good sign. But oh boy, were there more. Eventually, me and Diana are visited by Miki, another teacher, who I managed to get out of that crap hole in the end, who said this: "I'm deeply sorry, but we've forgotten to inform you about the taxes. From now on, 20% will be deducted from your overall payment. The Ukrainian embassy is trying to lift this tax for you, so after they're done, we'd refund you everything." Upon hearing this, I tried to seem calm. On the inside though, I was livid. There were many things leading to this. Me and Diana complaining to each other, me remembering what this guy said, me in the end checking on the taxation system of Japan just to realize it was a progressive tax starting with around 80,000 yen per month, nowhere near my income back there. I was pissed and decided to confront Karen on Telegram. From now on, I'll be really rude. Why did you do this? Why did you fool us? What happened? I made a question to Asan, the guy who briefed us on work. I asked him if the wages he presented included taxes or not. He said the taxes are already included. I was ready to work on your terms. Basically, I meant that we're not legitimate workers, but this tax doesn't seem legitimate. It seems more like a pay cut. In the end, we're not even working in the hotel as official employees. Are you saying that taxes are too high? That would be a question to the Japanese government. I just want to know why now? This seems like a scam. Calm down. If you keep using those bad words, we won't be able to have a normal conversation. If you can't accept taxes, then I think it would be better to just resign from the part-time job. I'm not afraid of paying taxes, but this would have to be so from the start. I'm sorry. I tried to de-escalate, but it didn't turn out so well. I'm sorry you didn't get convinced in the hotel, but I've got no intention of lying to you. Remember this statement. If you dislike it, then just leave, and that'd be the end of it. If you don't want to pay taxes, then leave the school, studies, and your job. I will continue my studies and job. But from now on, how many of these surprises will I have to encounter? This is a rude way to say it, really? You must have forgotten what the hotel staff told you. Just to be clear, the hotel staff is also involved in this scam. We don't mean to harm you. No matter where you work part-time, your tax will still be deducted. There's no harm in it. I understand it, painfully so, but I want to prevent others from such a shock. If you hate us this much, then just leave the school and the job, and that'll be the end of it. I'm so disappointed with your words. I think you should do everything on your own. If you want to hate someone, hate Japanese government and the school. Well, I'm sorry I've angered you this much. I mean no harm, but I need to make everything clear. Nobody ever told me what you just said. Maybe we really didn't explain it properly, and maybe it's our fault. But even despite this thing making us look bad, you didn't listen to our side, and now you're showering us in bad-mouthing. I can't forgive such a person. The visa for Ukrainians is a new one, so depending on the company, there might or might not be taxes. Many people don't understand that. Just to be clear, she works with immigrants. She knows that designated activities visa has been for a while, and she does know we have to pay taxes by ourselves, not let them do it for us. It's a new thing, even for Japanese, something to just accept. It's a difficult question of how to help you all. Please be conscious of that. There will be a lot of surprises, sure. There's a lot of things, rules, and laws we too don't understand. Remember this sentence, it will be hilarious later. Shouldn't we just explain it when we realize it ourselves? Again, just to be clear, they've had another batch of Ukrainian refugees for 3 months by then, more than enough time to figure everything out. And they sure did, she's just trying to gaslight me here. Why are you treating us like this? I really don't want to speak with someone who has such an attitude. This is how it went. She deleted her Telegram but not her messages. Well, guess what happens next? At first, I did apologize before her the following morning. Why? Well, I still don't know much, and believe the school could somehow deport me. Spoiler, no they couldn't. And Karen was my supervisor, so I had to make sacrifices. This would be the last time I apologized to them ever. Then, in less than a week, the tax was lifted from us, and me and Diana got our stolen money back. I'll jump a few months forward to when I did visit the tax office. Basically, yeah, this 20% tax does exist, since unless you're on your student or working visa as such, you're considered a non-resident and have to live 1 year in Japan. This is how they prevent work migration, but I'm still convinced that they steal this money from students from other parts of Asia, posing it as taxation by not registering them properly. Then something else happened. Apparently, Diana heard rumors that Karen was displeased with how many of us wanted to leave after 6 months with all the support money, and she decided to come up with measures. We would later find out what they were. Afterwards, when the summer break ended and everyone got back to school, we found out that instead of 150,000 yen each month, we'd be getting 250,000 each 3 months. We didn't know about it, even though all it took to find out was reading a brochure airport workers gave us. Meet Nippon Foundation, the organization of rich philanthropists who took it upon themselves to help Ukrainian refugees, the very reason why Kusoda and his school decided to take us in. Ideally for the school, we'd have to receive this welfare from the September of 2022 to September of 2025. This is money for adaptation. And pay it to them. Good enough, right? Win-win for everyone involved. Yeah, but this isn't what was going to be. A couple weeks in September, I got 2 roommates, minor drunks who we would argue about a lot of things, but overall, up to some point, we maintained peace. And something drastic happened. Basically, Taizia turned out to be an insane felon whose boyfriend was a convict. She too came for money, but couldn't hold herself from forcing herself into her roommate's room and beating her. We called the police, and they turned out to be absolutely useless. Japanese police is either ruthless as F, or, well, this. Please don't fight. Please call your teachers and live separately. Taizia was crying in broken English about how she's a victim, how she knows Japan, and how they have to help her apprehend me because I didn't let her further Karina. It also turned out that while we were waiting for cops to arrive, she had broken Karina's phone. Cool, right? That means she'd get punished for that. Nope, the police didn't care, and the school, according to Karen, couldn't help you if you lost the precious phone. They tried to bully Karina into compensation, but she's a hard gal. She had recorded her room's condition and how it was before Taizia had smashed her phone and after. In the end, Karen only separated Taizia from Karina in school and got her a new flat somewhere, which she had to pay for herself apparently. Kusoda and Karen completely disregarded Karina and didn't throw Taizia away because they wanted her money. But even that wasn't as horrible as what followed next. A day or two before the Crimean Bridge was blown up, Kusoda gathered us to announce something important. Elisa was there to translate his words for us. She didn't really do a good job, but some of that I can contribute to her not wanting to take sides, especially when all the heck broke loose. It was then when Kusoda decided to come up with some BS reason to force us to pay for the school after just 2 months of our stay, one of which was the summer break no less. This is when everything went south. Kusoda made those stupid papers in which he explained his decision by changes in the circumstance of the war between Russia and Ukraine, but wouldn't answer what they were and how Ukraine has anything to do with his greed. I also asked about why he didn't use the money from the city budget, which the school could claim, allocated especially to prevent cases like that, and he just fled. Most of our group consisted of girls. Obviously, only invalids like me or minors can leave Ukraine if they're males, and some of them started to comply right away. In fact, most of them did, even those who protested initially. Only a minor part stopped attending school, but for the most part, they didn't want to fight against the school. I was not one of them. I called BS. The next few weeks, me, my 2 roommates, and Karina started to devise a plan, search for information. We contacted our contacts who linked us to that school and even wrote to the Ukrainian embassy to let them know what was going on. The next few weeks, we were in a cold war with the school. No one dared to make the first move, but the threat was imminent. Once, Karen even called me to whine about my roommates since they were always late, lousy, and, how horrible, talked to Karina, and it made rumors circle, and how they're reporting their absence to the immigration office. This would be important later. I told them they could do whatever they want in their home. She told me, excuse me? We gave you those homes. Yeah, it was another lie. They never gave us those homes. The city hall gave them keys to give to us. They were in charge of supervising them, but that property was signed to us, the refugees. Then October came, and I lost my job at the restaurant. The season ended. I tried to talk with the manager. He even assured me I'd get another job offer, but it never came to be, as I knew too much of their tax frauds. Then, the school demanded that we should hand over our home Wi-Fi because apparently the service time was going to be over soon. To my shame, I did just that like everyone else, and only found out that I was scammed when I realized that those were routers given by the city hall and not the school. What's worse, they tried to sell us new routers for 30,000 yen, $200, and that'd just be the first payment. I called BS again and rallied people around me, claiming I'd be the one to provide them with a better option. Basically, I'd be the one to register SoftBank devices for like 8 people, including myself. And you know what? After I've announced my price, the router suddenly became only 8,000 yen. Surprise, surprise. Then comes the second meeting with Kusoda, in which he came up with even more BS reasons why he is so entitled to our money. How Russia is a dad and Ukraine is a mom. Yeah, a mom who was forcefully married to a psychopath who would throw acid on her just to keep her in-house. If we were to look at it from this angle, then yet it works. How he wants to create a crane-shaped school of peace in Buka, and how we have alternative options if we don't want to pay for the school. Basically, 1. Pay the school. 2. Pay to Kusoda's fund, option 1 but with extra steps. 3. Pay to the Ukrainian embassy. Many chose option 3, and so did I, but instead of outright giving them access to my bank account, I said I'd think about it for a weekend. I'd also participate in Kusoda's meetings with Karina, during which he forced Karen to apologize before her. But Karina wanted those words to sound from Kusoda's mouth, so she rejected the apology, and he called her a thief for not paying them, forgetting how they tried to scam her for the phone. It was November and the situation was only getting worse. I got my meeting with Kusoda, during which I told that if he wants to help Ukraine, then I'd gladly send my money to Ukrainian armed forces. This much he refused, but I reminded him that I still have an option to pay the embassy, apparently for humanitarian needs, and I wish to pay this money through the bank transfer, and that I need a school worker to accompany me to confirm my actions. He again rejected, saying I couldn't just send this money through a bank transfer and had to pay them. Then, he threatened me that the program of support they wished to offer us, courses of teaching Japanese, would be jeopardized because of my actions. You could say cue malicious compliance, but I never complied. Not like he wanted. I walked away. I had 254,000 yen they demanded from me, and I headed straight to the bank. As luck would have it, Mickey too was there, and I proudly gave her receipt from the terminal, stating that I indeed sent my money to the embassy of Ukraine. And what was the first thing she said? Why would you do such an egotistic thing? How am I egotistic when Kusoda clearly said that I could do that? By the way, hand it over to him. After that, our merry band started to look for the options of moving away. Well, my 2 roommates and Karina did. I only helped slightly when we were all united in our hate towards Kusoda. Oh, by the way, there was another meeting during which he dedicated his all to shaming me, but I only called out his BS. He was even forced to say, "You are shut up," when he couldn't give me clear answers. I also had 2 of his idiotic tirades recorded on my phone. I sent them to different people, and some claimed I was a butthole for speaking this way to someone this old and powerful. Remember how I said I don't give an F about such things, and I'm not allowing to bully myself just because of that? Well, that's it. By the way, remember what I said about KFC? Well, after what I've done, my shifts were suddenly cut down by 2, and by the middle of December, they'd be gone whatsoever. The old man tried to F me up, so I just shrugged my shoulders and found a new job through Hello Work Organization, Japanese Employment Center. Then another actor comes to play, Ivan, a Russian guy who's been living in Japan for years and was hired by the city hall to investigate our mess. He was of a great help and even gathered us to introduce the rest of the Ukrainians to the hello work. Guess what happened that time? Kusoda happened. He barged inside with Elisa and his court of sycophants. He started accusing the city hall workers in not contacting him first, so that his school could be in control of their offers. He wanted a lever of influence over others, so that he could always pull the same stunt as he did with me and KFC. But nobody let him do that. I even stood up for the poor Japanese dudes, as they were clearly not allowed to speak up against Kusoda. He's a wealthy heir to the former prefecture governor, and his granddaddy clearly made his money during World War II. He's filthy rich, but it brought him no class or wit. Anyway, Ivan, despite being promptly fired, he did stay in the city for a while though, contacted me to his friends, a couple of lawyers from Ukraine and a Japanese guy who is a journalist, and to whom I said what happened, and even showed Kusoda's promises and BS printed on paper. As for the lawyers, they sympathized with us and decided it would be the best course of action to make Kusoda establish a clear contract between us, refugees, and the school. Why he never did so, you might ask? Well, about that. Slowly after, Kusoda asked me to accompany him and his court of all liquors to the city hall. It's only 300 meters between it and school, but he'd taken a car. He tried to flatter me on our way there, but I dismissed him, as the bridge between us was already burned. In the end, he spent an hour berating staff for not giving him money from the city's budget, how he sends our attendants to the immigration office, and left. I stayed to ask a few questions. But before that, let me explain what did he mean by sending attendants to immigration office. Basically, each student with namesake visa has their attendance and success rates sent to immigration office, where it's decided whether or not they're worthy of staying in Japan. This is a major lever of influence over foreigners for schools and universities. You can get deported after a single report from a teaching institution, and there's nothing you can do against it. That is if you're on a student visa, which we were not. So his threats of sending our attendants to immigration office meant literally nothing, even in case some of us decides to go to university or something. So as to why he never got money from the budget, at first I believe they did receive funds and only lied to us just to get more. The truth turned out to be more ridiculous. In reality, Kusoda never saw a single yen from the city hall because he never made a contract with us. He literally couldn't prove that we were his students, and folks from the city hall couldn't do anything. They did try to find a loophole, but were either unsuccessful or unwilling to fill the elders' pockets, especially after he yelled at them just to make a point to me. So he took it upon us. He didn't want a contract just to be able to spin the conditions however he liked, as it would give both parties clearly defined rights and responsibilities one would not be able to easily change by a whim. Kusoda outplayed himself, plain and simple. In the end, Mickey contacted me and gave me my receipt, saying Kusoda couldn't accept my payment as legitimate, and I said I didn't care, that they could throw me out for all I cared. She replied that I was their valued student and they couldn't do it. So I asked her to run away before crap could hit the fan. She said I was kind, but I dismissed her words. She had to work 3 more months per contract, but she did listen to me. Apparently, Karen bullied her, so I couldn't bear her staying at that hellish place working for 1,000 yen per hour, when the minimum wage was $9.65 or something. I stayed though. I attended the lectures as much as I could. When I couldn't, it was because my multiple sclerosis, which got much worse due to stress and anxieties of war, both in Ukraine and Japan, and graduated 1 week before the end of the term in March. But that happened in the end of it. Before I dropped out, we exacted our revenge. So my female friends were contacted by a journalist from NHK. She too is a Ukrainian. She and her Japanese pal would betray me later, but that's a whole different story. Who interviewed us about the school. By that time, Karina and my 2 roommates moved to Tokyo, but my fight wasn't over yet. Ivan prepared a TV venue for me in which I could explain everything I told to his friend. He too was there, to a bunch of journalists. Funnily enough, they first took an interview from Kusoda, during which he completely embarrassed himself by saying things like, they're refugees, aristocrats, and it's only fair that we deserve their money. Or, why would I need a contract? You don't need a contract when you want to eat ramen. Just to be clear, he meant that you don't need to form a contract to buy ramen from a store, which reveals that Kusoda lacks basic understanding of civil law, which defines receipt as a contract. Kusoda couldn't answer a simple question straight, kept belittling us, and made a fool of himself by acting immature before cameras. Then it was my turn, my revenge. I tried to be as polite and considerate as possible. I explained the situation and how the school scammed us multiple times, lied to us. I pushed all the blame to Kusoda, and only he and Karen were scums there. Others did their best to help us, even though they were powerless against the entitled chairman, as, number 1, they're Japanese, and they can't fathom going against an elder. 2, he can throw them away anytime, as it's a private company he owns. I said that his refugees aristocrat statement was a disgrace for refusing to comply with his ridiculous demands, that we wouldn't be in Japan if not for the war, that his egoism was ruining the school's reputation, its honor, and the lives of its staff. At that point, they couldn't invite new refugees, as they were marked as an unreliable guarantor. I told them everything. I wasn't too eloquent, and my speaking skills weren't too great, but I still made my point, and it ruined him. After that, Kusoda tried to organize another interview, but quickly backed down on that. Turned out that they were never going to transfer the money to the embassy. Only if you demand proof, they'd do it. Diana did, and they did it quite reluctantly, and not every girl had the guts to do that. This too went to journalists, by the way. In the end, Kusoda resigned, and his estranged daughter took over. Karen was fired too. To her, my last message was, I'm honored to pay my gratitude for all the care you've shown to me, but in the context, this was basically my way of saying, F you, I don't want to see you ever again. Another teacher took Karen's place. I don't know her that much, but I do know she's a good woman, and the school prospers now. Kusoda sits at his home now. He never lost his funds, so his pension will be filled with rich and luxury. That doesn't seem to make him happy though. Last time I checked on him, he was trying to get elected by crapping on me, other Ukrainians, Chinese, promising to abolish value-added taxes, and all the other nonsense. He barely had 80 readers on Twitter, so despite him having everything one could possibly want, he'd be crying in the void. Diana had returned to Ukraine and got part of her money back. In fact, we forced the school to refund everyone all the money, considering their promise of free 6 months. Elisa finished her studies and moved to Tokyo, where she now lives and works. Taisia got into legal troubles and was placed before the ultimatum. Either she goes back to her hole in Ukraine or faces charges. She chose the former. Karina got a job in Tokyo too, assisting Ukrainian refugees. As for me, I got my 254,000 yen back when the embassy refunded me the money, and eventually I moved towns. It's not an and everyone clapped kind of story, as my problems were only starting, but when I look back on those 9 months of my life, I have no regrets at what I've done. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Chibinoi. It says, I skimmed through this all, and while being victimized for tax evasion through a money laundering scheme by your host nation sucks, I'm getting the impression that no one in this story is exactly super polished. Basically, everyone sucks here to different degrees for different reasons, and a whole lot of skepticism for the presented intake of foreign immigrants to a nation notoriously known for keeping fairly close watch on its non-citizens. I'm more focusing on the fact that OP decided to stand up for what was right, and made the situation better for a lot of other people as well. I'm very much so impressed with how they navigated the Japanese culture, where it's super taboo to badmouth elders. OP was able to call out Kusoda without backing down. That shows OP has some serious guts and determination. I think this story is just a prime example of how you should stand up for what is right. Way to go, OP. If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to the favorites on whichever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.